So again, my name is Danny Fitzgerald. I'm the Regional Director for the San Diego Imperial Small Business Development Center Network. Welcome to 2023. I think I can still kind of say Happy New Year since this is our first one of this calendar year. To be able to kind of kick off the year, we're doing something a little bit different as opposed to just our regular panel of lenders. We have kind of a new group of folks that are able to come on from Citibank to be able to describe a new product or a new way in which to really kind of be able to match up with lending. And it's pretty exciting in that it's no cost to you. It's a way in which to kind of better understand some of your lending options without getting a bunch of pulls on your credit report or just having to kind of shop around and figure things out. And so it's something that's new, certainly to the California marketplace. It's been in the southeast and the eastern part of the U.S. and now coming to California. In addition to Rohit, Michelle, and Caitlin from Citibank, we have Adriana Sanchez and Than Pham from that are lenders that are participating in the program. And so really, I'm going to let Citibank kind of drive this one today. But again, we thank everybody for this. And so Lynn's going to be able to put some additional information also in the chat as we go along.
Great. Thank you,
Rohit,
Danny.
you can take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining. Happy New Year as well. We were just talking before we got started about how it's great to get a 3-day weekend, just, jumping back into the new year. But thank you all for joining us on a Friday. We'll kind of cover a couple of different topics, and I want to make sure that I give enough time for Dan and Adriana to kind of introduce their institutions and introduce themselves. My name is Rohit Mathur. I work for Citibank. I lead a platform that we're going to talk about today called Bridge Built by Citi. That is bridgebuiltbyciti.com or bridgebyciti.com. And that's CITI, by the way, not CITY. What we have built here is really a platform, and look, there's a lot out there. So I'll talk about the key differentiators for us, right? This is something that helps connect small and medium-sized businesses to regional bank, community banks, and CDFIs, just like the ones that Adriana and Tan work for. And you'll hear more from them about what they do exactly, right? The 3 key differentiators from our platform versus everything else that's kind of out there is, one, we only have banks and CDFIs. So we don't have any online lenders offering 30% interest rates or 40% interest rates. We've got banks and relationship managers like the ones you'll talk to today that are totally focused on giving you bank lending. All we have tried to build is a better connection point to get to them. And then number 2, you actually interact with real human beings, right? So Adriana and Tam are actual bankers on the platform. Part of the first part is digital to make things more efficient, but eventually our goal is for you to talk to one of them or one of the other lenders on the platform and go through your loan needs, because we think, especially in small and medium-sized business lending, that is really important to be able to have that interaction. None of these deals are sort of cookie cutter, like a credit card or something, right? Small business loans always need a lot of diligence. There's a lot of structuring involved. And so the faster you guys can get to talk to these bankers, the better we think it is for your business to kind of get that deal, which is perfect for you. The last one, which I'll kind of talk about from a Bridge perspective, is, we want to give you choices, right? That is the whole reason why we created Bridge. Part of my career has been, spending a lot of time with large corporates and mid corporates, and seeing how they access loans. And when a large corporate like Google says, I want $1 billion, a bunch of banks come in front of them and show them different term sheets and say, hey, here's how you can borrow that money, and here's the interest rates. That's not available to small business owners. So what we've done with Bridge is we've got 69 different lenders on our platform today, that when you submit a loan request, which takes, like Danny said, it's a very quick process. There's no credit pulls and there's no cost to you. When you submit that, 69 lenders can look at that. Realistically, probably 2 or 3 or 4 will probably be interested in that deal, but they'll respond to you with indicative non-binding terms. Once you look at those, you can then pick the lender that you think works best for you and start working with them to get that deal closed. But even that process, we think, takes just 1 or 2 days to get done, which is different than if you were to go out yourself and go find 3 or 4 different lenders and have the same conversation with 3 or 4 different lenders. But I, again, want to make this more about, what information Dan and Adriana can share with you. So, that was my small plug for Bridge. Happy to kind of share more information if you guys have questions. We don't have access to the chat, so Lynn, feel free to shout it out if you see anything pop up that we need to answer. But as a follow-up, we'll make sure we get you guys the email address. We think the process is really intuitive. Kate, Michelle, and myself are totally available if you have follow-up questions, and we can reach out to you. But with that, I'll pause and I will hand it over to Dan and Adriana to introduce themselves and the institutions. I'll start with Adriana and then move to Dan. Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Adriana Sanchez. I have been with CDC Small Business Finance since January of 2021. I started with the PPP team. I did loan origination and then PPP forgiveness. In July of last year, I became a full-time small business loan officer with my current team. CDC has been a local CDFI in San Diego for over 40 years now. We are one of the nation's leading mission-based small business lenders. Here at CDC, we focus on your whole story, not just the numbers. We're not just going to say no. We want to hear your story. Tell me more, tell me more. So, we take that extra step to learn about you and your businesses so we can find you the right financing matches for your goals.
So I'll go, hey, I'm Tang. I'm with California International Bank. We are a small community bank located in Westminster. We are a minority deposit institution, and that means there's a minority affiliation. And for us, we are the only Vietnamese American bank in the country. So I have been with the bank since 2017, and currently I'm the president and CEO of the bank. And what we're here to do is we mainly look at the transactions that the bigger banks don't do. So that's kind of our niche.
That's great. Just by maybe you could put a thumbs up or anything through the Zoom. How many people had sort of heard about CDC or California International Bank before this meeting? Okay, I'm going to take this is my quick and dirty way of doing surveys, right? But these are two incredible institutions that, as you heard from both of them, right, are very, oh, there you go, you got one thumbs up, that's good. So these are two incredible institutions that are totally focused on small and medium-sized businesses, right? And the challenge is exactly this, which is, I'm sure you've heard of Bank of America, I'm sure you've heard of Citibank, I'm sure you've heard of these large institutions that spend a lot of money on marketing and technology, but it's sometimes harder to find these great institutions like CDC and California International Bank. And by the way, the 67 other lenders on our platform. But many times these are the perfect lenders for you because, as you've already heard from them and you'll hear more about this, they're very focused on your type of loan, right? And so our goal is really to try and help make that connection. And so with that, I'll ask Dan a question. And as we're kind of going through this, it's a really nice sized group. So if you've got questions, please feel free to send them over the chat to Lynn maybe, and Lynn, you can maybe in a couple of questions I'll give you a chance to kind of ask some of those. But just send some questions over if you guys have questions for these guys. But Dan, I'll ask you the first one. What type of deals do you guys typically look at? Is there like a sweet spot that you focus on?
So our sweet spot is we like to do SBA 7A loans. With collateralized by real estate. And so generally what will happen is they go to a bigger bank that promises them the world, and then something happens where they can't get it done, and then they're kind of scrambling. And then what usually happens is that they have a credit box like with 10, 15 items, and then they miss 14 out of 15. And just the way that it works is you got to meet all 15. So they get scrambling and they come to us, and those are the type of deals that we do.
Got it. So the stuff that's even harder to do. So I want to ask Adriana a question, but Dan, everyone, people at times are very scared of SBA because they're scared of all the documentation requests and, oh my God, what's going to happen with SBA? What is your thought on this? Obviously, you guys do this all the time. What is the right way, or how should people think about that?
So I used to work at large corporate myself, and the documentation required to me after after the Great Recession happened, there shouldn't be a much bigger difference. In fact, if you're going through the process and the lender isn't asking you for a bunch of stuff, that should be kind of a signal that they're not really doing their job. They're just kind of putting your name on a pipeline. And that happens a lot more than any bank would like to admit.
That's true. No, that's a really good point. So I think, for me, the takeaway there is, right, I don't, SBA doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a lot harder or a lot more documentation. All loans require documentation. And I think connecting and getting with your bankers early to kind of go through that is important. I'll ask one question to Adriana. CDFI, right? I know I mentioned that term. I'm the first to admit I've been in banking for a long time. I didn't know what a CDFI was up to 2 years ago. I do now, and I think they're incredible. I talk about them all the time. But Adriana, if you don't mind spending a quick second on just kind of walking through what a CDFI is, how it's different from a bank.
Okay, so CDFI stands for Community Development Financial Institution. Basically, we are lenders with a mission. Our mission is to provide responsible and fair financing to the underserved communities, rural, urban, Native American, financing that the mainstream finance normally doesn't reach out to, where others see risk, we see an opportunity. Traditional banks, unlike traditional banks, we're specializing in lending to individuals, small businesses, startup businesses, under-resourced communities. We offer, here at CDC, we offer financial education. We have a business advising team that helps, with projections and business plans. We do different types of business coaching. So I think that's the real big difference that I've seen is that traditional banks kind of shy away from the smaller businesses or the startup businesses. And that's kind of where I'm focusing.
That's great. So that's super helpful for people to kind of know. And is there like a size that people should think about when they think about CDFIs? Like what size of loans would you guys do? Is there a size of business that they should say, hey, I'm good for, I should reach out to a CDFI or I shouldn't?
Well, for us here at CDC, our loans go as low as 20,000. For the 7A, this is as low as 20,000 up to 350,000.
Great, that's super helpful. Okay, so Lynn, I'll pause and see if are there any questions in the chat. I'm sorry, I don't have access to it, but are there any questions in the chat that we can ask? Or Marissa or anyone else?
Okay,
sorry.
hold on.
Not to pick on Lynn.
No. Yes, we do. So we have one that is asking about, does that include building loans?
Okay, so maybe that's to both of you guys. I know there are other lenders on Bridge that do a bunch of building loans, right? So I'll answer that question for the 67 lenders not represented on the phone, but Dan and Adriana.
Here at CDC, we have a 504 department. So yeah, we can do building and real estate loans. It's not particularly my department, but we do have a department that works with that.
Yeah, and we would do the building loans in the 7A program.
Got it. Lynn, any other questions?
Yes, there's another one. We are looking for SBA loans secured by CRE, which includes buildings.
That was me answering the question in the chat there.
That's what I thought, and I was kind of
Perfect.
looking at it and going, okay. So no, those are the only questions that we have.
Okay,
right
cool.
now.
That's good. So we'll just carry on and again, just keep throwing questions out there as you guys hear stuff. And then at the end, we're going to pause and see if there's other questions in general for the whole group that we can kind of discuss. Adriana, I'll start with you this time. What is a kind of loan review process for you guys? How should people think about that? A lot of times people are scared to kind of ask what the sausage making, right? But what does a loan review process look like for CDC?
So when I first get the Bridge platform, I'm not really looking for a whole lot. We don't have a credit box that we have to meet, or there's not too many guidelines in our credit box. So when I'm on the platform, I'm initially looking for, are they in a market that we service? Are they in an industry we service? How much they're requesting and what the use of purpose for the loan is going to be. If I can check off those 4 boxes, then I send over the terms to them. After that, I'll set up an initial call, an introduction call, and that's where I will dig into the meat and potatoes of their business and see if we can work together or not.
Awesome.
Do you want me to go through the end of our
No,
process?
maybe we'll pause and see if Dan wants to kind of add his part, and then we can come back to the next step of the sort of process.
Okay.
So for me, I would generally ask for like a light package of financial information. And that takes me maybe 2 or 3 days to review. And if we want to do it, then we issue an LOI. But it's generally a quick process. And that light financial package, it may not sound like when I say at least 3 years of personal and business tax returns, along with current year-to-date financial statement and a personal financial.
Got it. That's I think that's great, right? I think anytime someone's giving you like very exact things that they need, that's always positive because then you know exactly what the sort of guidepost is. But I think once you kind of get all of that information, you know, a lot of people hear about this kind of black box of credit underwriting, right? Where, you know, it sounds like everyone's given the information, you know, you share all of that, and then all of a sudden someone calls you, hopefully a few weeks later, and says, here, we've approved it, or even worse, hey, we couldn't get there. What's that kind of black box credit process for each of you guys? And I'll start back with Adriana.
So we don't really, I mean, I don't know that it's a black box. So like Dan was saying, we have specific things that we need. We need 2 years for an existing business. We need 2 years of previous tax returns. We need current profit and loss. We're asking for 6 months worth of business bank statements. On the personal side, we're asking for your last year of tax returns, current proof of income, and then we pull the credit. You know, if for here at CDC, we don't focus so much on the credit. There are a few things that we just can't get around. And this is always like in my first conversation with my borrowers, you can't have any bankruptcies within the last 36 months. You can't have any open liens or lawsuits, including pending divorce, back child support, you know, unpaid taxes. And then a big one that most borrowers aren't aware of is the SBSS score of 140. And I kind of just go into, you know, SBSS is the SBA's version of a FICO score. It's a combination of the business and personal credit. During the conversation, if everything goes well and they're comfortable going over, you know, if they're comfortable moving forward with any question, they can ask any questions. I tell them it takes about 2 to 3 business days for me to review everything once they get it to me. And then I pass it on for review, and then we connect them with our underwriting team.
That's awesome. And Dan, is there a kind of a minimum FICO score that you guys look at? Is there something that people should keep in mind to like not waste their time on this stuff?
For me, there's no minimum FICO score because we understand a need for flexibility. But you can't just show, I guess you can't just be reckless and not pay your bills, right? Like there's a reason why the score is low. And if the reason you give us is just like, I forgot or I didn't know, that's not generally a good one. Low FICO score examples where I've seen that we've overcome is, you know, somebody went through a divorce or a medical issue, or they had to file bankruptcy. Those are issues that, but the bankruptcy even has to be explainable, right? So we don't have a minimum. We do like to see 660 and above, but no technical minimum.
Adriana, anything specific from you guys on that?
We don't have a minimum FICO score. I actually just moved a file that was a 595. So it's, again, we're here, we'll listen to the story. It's got to be like he said, like we can't just be like, I just like paying my bills, but you know, COVID happened and, you know, I had to, you know, live off of credit cards for a little bit and this happened, or, so we listen to the story. We can work with, you know, we try to work with everybody.
That's great. You know, and I think, you know, the one thing that I kind of heard a lot, and I think people talk about this a lot, is the story, right? I think it's very interesting because I think finance, you know, I think lending in general, right? There's a mix. There's definitely hard numbers, right? So if you have 5 years of huge net losses and you've got no revenue, I think it's hard for a lender to get there. But I think there's the numbers and then there's the story behind it. And you'll hear a lot of people consistently talk about story, at least on the lending side. And so, Adriana and Dan, like when you talk about story, right? Like what is a good, what is too much information? What's not enough information? Like what is a good way for a borrower who's listening to you guys today saying, hey, what should I put into Bridge, or what should I even talk to you about if I talk to you directly? What's like a good, without giving an example of the story, but like what's a good way of them to structure, what they should be telling you?
Okay.
Go
You
ahead.
go first. Well, I can go. Well, so for me, there's really never too much information. I mean, I don't need to hear about like your dog going to the vet last week, but never really too much information. What we would be focused on is what you're going to use the money on, and then how you make money. So if we'd like to have a good understanding of your business model and the use of funds. But too much information, we haven't really encountered that before. It's always on the opposite spectrum, which is too little, and we get surprised at last second.
And I think for me, like I have heard a lot of personal like stories, and sometimes it's good to hear a personal story. This is how you ended up where you were. But I recently had a borrower who's telling me about something that happened in the 3rd grade of why he's got low self-esteem now. And we're on the phone for an hour and 20 minutes. And it's like, absolutely nothing, about this unfortunate event that happened in your life at 3rd grade is telling me why your business is not successful now. Like, yes, I like to hear a little bit about the personal. It makes it more like human interaction and everything. But yeah, like try to keep it towards the business. Like, what are you doing to your business? Why did you get into this business? How do you see yourself succeeding? Give me the meat and potatoes of your business. Obviously, personal kind of seasons it a little bit, but right, I don't need to know about your dog going to the vet. I don't, all of the little nuances of your personal life, not always necessary.
Got it. Super helpful. I think that's important, right? That's important to tell the story, important to talk about the business, important to talk about why it's making money, not making money, what happened during COVID, what's happening after COVID, and important to kind of at least share a little bit about, here's a business owner and here's who I am, but maybe not a lot about the 3rd grade. But Adriana, kudos to you for listening through all of that. That's awesome. I'll pause again, and Lynn, and see if there's any questions in the chat. Or also, if anyone wants to kind of, you can use any of the reactions below to ask a question, and we can pause and see if there's any questions that people would like to say out loud.
There are a couple of questions. What is a typical term of loan?
Okay, that's great. What do either or both of you guys want to hit that?
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
So for us, for the commercial real estate loans, SBA 7A, commercial real estate loans are all 25 years fully amortizing. And however, if you want to do a working capital, then that's 10 years fully amortizing typically. And machinery and equipment is going to depend on the expected economic life of the equipment. So that's the terms for us. Adriana?
So for us we're doing mostly working capital and equipment. Like I said, I don't really do the real estate side. So for us, it is prime plus a spread of 4.75%. That is variable calendar quarter.
What about the term? How long?
The term is 10. Anything over 50,000 is 10 years. Less than 50,000 is generally 6 years.
Got it. And a lot of traditional working capital lines of credit that will be done by many banks on the platform range from 3 to 5 years as well. If it is a sort of slightly larger business loan, it is sort of 3 to 5 years. Rates obviously vary, but nothing on the platform will be at that 30% interest. It'll be at what the interest rates are. Obviously, everyone's probably been inundated with how high interest rates have gone over the last 6 months, but these rates are still amongst the best you can get really for a small business loan. Lynn, any other questions?
Yes. Does the company have to be based in California?
Great question. I think I'll take that first, and I'll hand it over to these guys. For Bridge, we have lenders that cover the entire country, 50 states plus Washington, D.C. So submitting a request on bridgebuiltbycity.com, you are opening yourself up to any lender there are lenders who will only lend within California. Those lenders exist, but there are also lenders that might be in Colorado that will lend in California. And we have a number of national lenders that will be lending in any state. So at least for the bridge platform, absolutely no restriction about where it's based. It is US based, right? So US based companies, if you've got a company not based in the US, that's different. But Adriana and Tang?
So for CDC, we lend in 17 different states. I can send over a list of that, but we lend in 17 different states, including DC. We are slowly but steadily expanding. So there's that.
So for us, we are California only.
Got it. And super relevant to this call since it's the San Diego SPDC. Lynn, any other questions?
Yes, we have one more question. Does anyone do financing for commercial solar developments?
So
We would 100% do it as long as it is SBA eligible.
we do solar.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of banks do a lot of ESG focused loans. I think that's a definite huge focus these days. We've got a lot of banks on the platform that will look at that. So I think, again, be very clear when you write the description of when you're putting in the request, where it says very clearly that, hey, this is for a solar project or whatever, and that definitely that is something that banks will be looking to do. Lynn, any others right now?
No, that was
Oh.
it.
Okay. And so can I'll ask just the group in general, if does anyone have a question that they sort of like to ask out loud, not put it into the chat even, we can pause for like 2 seconds and see if someone wants to go off mute and ask a question.
And there's one that just came into the chat.
Okay.
And it says, if I ask for X and the business grows beyond expectation, can that first million be consolidated into a new loan with a bigger ask? And I think it's just money. If I ask for a certain amount of money and the business grows beyond that expectation, can the first loan be consolidated into a new loan? So they have and with a longer time to pay off the loan.
Well, first of all, you're probably the dream borrower for most banks, right? If you're performing well and you need more capital because of the performance, and your performance can fund that. Various different ways to structure it. I'll let Adriana and Tang talk about how they would do it. One thing that depending on the size of the deal, a lot of times we have seen banks kind of add an accordion function where they will allow you to kind of like an accordion, just expand the deal a little bit. So it could be an expansion of 500,000 or something that they'll build in. Most banks, if you're growing and you need capital to grow and the financials support it, will be happy to refinance and kind of do a larger deal. But I'll let Adriana and Tang kind of give you their view.
So
Go
ahead.
ahead. Okay.
Hey, hold on
for
a
us-
second. There is one more quick question. Are there any grant programs for startup ideas?
Okay, so let's, Adriana and Tang, if you want to answer the one about how you would do the expansion, and then we can get to the grants.
So for us, we do through SBA. So unfortunately, it's most likely going to have to be 2 different loans. So Adriana, you can take that one.
So if it's like a working capital loan for us, for our 7A, like I said, we max out at 350 right now, but we would be able to refinance that loan into another loan. I don't know that I guess it does kind of make sense. Not really, because our rates are variable, but we could refinance your debt into our loan and then max you out at our 350.
Right. I would just to kind of make sure that point is answered, right? I think a lot of different lenders, different kinds of requirements. I would say that's something that, is definitely a good problem to have. I'm sure the lenders will be able to solve that for you. And having that relationship, even if it is with Adriana, right? And Adriana says, hey, we tap out at 350. There are ways that they'll be able to put you in touch with the right lender to say, hey, these guys will do the remaining part of it, right? So there's a lot of different options. I think, getting that first relationship solidified is probably the most important. And on grant programs, maybe this is more for Adriana. Any grant programs that you know of that you guys can direct people towards?
There's nothing that I know of right now, but there's always something coming up, and any day it can change. 2 p.m. today, there might be a grant that wasn't here right now. So, I keep my ears open, and our team, we're just always, hey, did you hear about this one? Do you know about that one? So it can change in, drop of a dime.
And I'll kind of plug, even though maybe they don't want me to, but I'll plug Danny and the SBDC. They're usually the best people to know about a bunch of grants and stuff. So I think that's a great resource, right? We're huge fans of the SBDC as well, and just that's a great resource to ask about those questions. But Danny, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
So very quick. So one just ended, unfortunately, but we're hoping it will come back, which was the California Dream Fund. That's where people were able to go through some intensive training programs and be eligible for grants. Depending on the business, sometimes there are other ones. The ones that are still out there is if someone is starting a childcare business, there are grants available. And so depending on the industry type, there might also be some still that are in existence. So the best thing to do, Lynn's put our contact information in there and sign up for some advising. And then depending on what your industry type is, or if other grants come available, you'll be able to find out about them that way.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Danny. Any questions that people want to put their hand up for, or kind of go off mute and just yell out for the group?
So I see there is one other good question here in the chat from Jesus. Are there minimum annual revenue requirements?
Great question. I will tell you, for the bridge platform, that requirement is $100,000. Now, if you are, we're starting 2023 right now. If you ended 2022 with like 90,000, and you're going to be at 100,000 in 2024, or are there LTM, I think that's still definitely a viable candidate for the platform. That is, that might be higher than what Adriana or Tan would look at, so I'll let them answer. But for the platform itself, $100,000 is our minimum revenue to kind of use the platform.
So for us, we don't have a minimum revenue requirement. We do underwrite your cash flow. So our minimum loan amount is 500,000. So pretty much the revenue would just have to be at a sufficient level to get approved for the $500,000 loan.
For us, there's no minimum revenue amount. Like I said, we do a lot of like startup early stages. So we also look at your cash flow, and we will underwrite depending on what you can cover.
Awesome. Can I ask a question to Adriana on that startup, right? Because I think a lot of people don't. What is a startup? Is it, because I think is it the startup like, hey, I have an idea, I'm going to start a business? Is it the startup that I've opened doors, or I've got, what do you think is the right stage of a startup for you guys to lend to?
We've done both. We've done where I just came up with this idea. This is what we're doing. I've been thinking about it with my brother for 5 years, and now we're ready to get the ball rolling. We really don't have anything. We barely have a business plan. Like I said, we have a business advising team that can help with that. We hope that you have a little bit more than, just a thought, but, you've started the wheels in motion and everything. But for us, a startup is any business that hasn't had 2 years of tax returns filed.
Got it. Super helpful. The thing I'd sort of just mention about startups, right, is, I think this is the big advantage of a CDFI. And this is why we want to have CDFIs on our platform, because a lot of traditional banks, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of traditional banks won't do a lot of startup loans, just like, a CDFI maybe won't do a $5 million loan. So we've tried to put together a bunch of 69 or 70 lenders that will do anything depending on your size. So if you want a $5 or $10 million loan, we've got a bunch of lenders that do that. If you want a startup loan, Adriana and other lenders will do that. And then if you want this sort of very interesting sort of commercial real estate or California-based loan, Tang and other lenders will do that as well, right? So I think that's kind of our value proposition as well, is different types of, it's hard to kind of have a specific bucket for everyone, right? But so we've got enough lenders to kind of give different people what they need. Another question I kind of wanted to ask, right, is, what is the one piece of advice you try to give people right before they come to you with a loan? Is it about diligence? Is it about documents? What is the one piece of advice, Adriana first, and then maybe Tang, you would like to give to sort of everyone here, maybe who are looking for loans or who are about to think about, what their lending needs are?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Like I said, I do a
Perfect.
lot of like startup or really early stages, and people are like, well, I don't know about this. Don't be afraid to ask questions. We have, like I said, we have a business advising team. If you don't know how to do your 24 months of projections, let me know. I have somebody that's their job. They do that all day, every day. You don't know how to write out your business plan. You don't really know where to start looking for, the research in the industry of, the numbers for all. Let me know. It's okay. When I say I need your profit and loss, and you're like, well, I don't really know what that is, and send me a Schedule C. The Schedule C, yes, it says profit and loss on top of it. That is not the actual profit and loss that we need. We have people here to help you with that. So never be afraid to say, I don't know what that is, or can you explain this better? Can you help me understand that more? That's my job. That's our job. That's what we are here for, is to help you become a successful business.
Great. Yeah. And same goes for today. Keep asking questions, but Dang, over to you.
So our companies are going to be a little bit more mature. So my feedback would be that you definitely know how you're going to use the money, how much money you're going to need, and then also really be able to explain your business plan and have the documentation to back it up. So like for me, it's very bad for me to hear when I say, so what are you looking for? And what are you going to use with the money? And they will say, well, it depends on how much money you can give me. Right? When I hear that, I'm like, well, that means you really need to get back to your planning. So really have a plan for what you're going to do with the money, understand your business, and have the documentation to back up everything.
Yeah, I think both great pieces of advice. And I think what you're hearing on the phone here is great, because it's different stages of the company's life cycle, right? And making sure that there's different lenders at each of those positions. And as you progress through that life cycle, there's different kind of questions that come up from lenders. Someone who's lending you, $100,000 for a more early stage will have one type of questions. Someone who's looking for a $3 or $5 million loan will have a different set of questions. I think, to Adriana's point, always ask. Don't feel afraid to ask. And these forums, I think, are a great way to do it, because you're not asking them for a credit decision. You're just asking sort of for advice. The last kind of point that I want to touch on, at least from the prepared questions here, is on documentation and diligence. I think you guys mentioned this, which I thought was great, right? These are the 4 or 5 things we always need. What are like the 2 or 3 things, and maybe you already said this, so I'm sorry I'm making you repeat it. What are the 2 or 3 things that, before a borrower even starts talking to you, and I know you might have different answers, that they should have ready? Like, there's no point talking to you before they've got these 2 or 3 things ready. Dang, I'll start with you. What's the 2 or 3 things that they should have ready to go?
So it's all about documentation for us. So they definitely got to have their 3 years of tax return. Or if they're less than 3 years in business, then whatever most recent tax returns, up to 3 years, and a current financial statement that puts. So that's it for us. You got to have your financials in order, because if you don't know what's going on in your business, it's going to be tough to get a loan.
Perfect. That's great advice. Adriana?
I would say the same for existing businesses, the last 2 years of your business tax return and your current financial statement, profit and loss. For a startup, it's ideal to have your current proof of income and your last year's personal tax return. Also, if you have a business plan, or at least a brief executive and business summary.
That's great advice. What we've noticed, and we have identified documentation as a huge issue, because even once you start talking to Adriana or Tank, this is the basic documentation, but then there'll probably be additional stuff that they'll need as you go through the process. What we built on Bridge, actually literally addressing this, it wasn't there in the original version of Bridge, is a due diligence portal where they can come and ask you these questions and say, hey, I need you to upload these 4 or 5 pieces of information, and you can upload that, but it's all in one place. And it's not kind of over email or, I thought I sent it to you or whatever. So that's another feature, again, to plug Bridge, right? But another great feature that we thought was very exciting, because we've noticed that documentation is a constant challenge for many borrowers. And another feature, by the way, that all the large corporates have something similar to what we built, right? They have these data rooms that they call them, where they've got a lot of information they're allowed to put put in. We wanted to build that for small business owners, medium-sized business owners as well. So that was a lot of the prepared questions. We've got about 15 minutes left. I want to make sure that we give more than enough time for any questions from the group. I'll pause. Lynn, Danny, Marissa, let us know if there's any other questions that are coming up in the chat, or if people want to go off mute and ask questions, that is perfectly fine as well.
So here's a question that came in. What's the average turnaround time for an SBA 7A loan? And is real estate the only type of collateral that can be utilized for this type of loan? And there's a
Okay.
second part
Oh.
after you finish that, I'll tell it, is there a percentage of cash flow you were looking for based on the loan amount? Do you want me to say that again?
So for the SBA 7A loan, use of funds can be pretty much anything. Collateral can kind of be pretty much anything. It's just you're going to get different discount rates for the collateral based on what it is. Real estate's always the highest. Receivables inventory is the lowest, and then in between is machinery and equipment. So, and the average turnaround time for us, if we get a full pack, like completed, every I dotted, every T crossed package, it's 45 to 60 days from getting the complete package.
And that
then,
usually includes like an appraisal and stuff too, right?
Yes, we got to get the appraisal and everything in there. So 45, 60 days. And then for the cash flow question, it's not a percentage of cash flow. It's called a debt service ratio. And this is something that the SBA actually requires. The SBA minimum is 1.15. For us, we are 1.25 though. We build in a little cushion above the SBA minimum. So with that,
and just so everyone knows, the debt service coverage is basically what your income to your debt, right? Your receipts, are you able to cover your debt 1.1 times your debt, 1.25 times your debt payments? That's your principal interest, and so that's kind of the debt service coverage ratio. Another one where like the SBA ratio and stuff is all online. You're more welcome to kind of look at it and solve it for yourself, right?
So for us, again, SBA, so the debt service is the 1-to-1. For the turnaround time, that can be, it depends on a few things, like how complicated is your deal? Are you an existing business just looking for working capital? Are you a startup business that, you're still looking for a location? So those can very much, that'll make a big difference on how quickly we can get you through the process. It also depends on how quickly you respond to emails and send in the documentation. Once we have a complete package, get you pre-qual, get you connected with the underwriting team, we like to say it takes about 4 to 8 weeks. Again, some can happen sooner, some can happen later. I've had a borrower that we were able to get her, through the process in 3.5 weeks. And then I've been working with a borrower since August and we're still not even into underwriting. It really just depends. But ideally we say 4 to 8 weeks.
And you're hearing a lot about the SBA portion. There are conventional loans, which are non-SBA. We've got a bunch of banks that do conventional. I think the record, and Kate can keep me honest, I think was 3 or 4 weeks where we had a deal come into the platform and close. Within 4 weeks, it was not an SBA deal, not real estate. It was just a working capital line of credit based on the cash flows, AR inventory of that business. And so we've really seen the gamut, to the points already made by Dang and Adriana. A lot of it depends on you, right? People will always say, oh, it took too long with the bank. Are you being as responsive as you can be when the bank or the CDFI is asking you questions? You heard both of them kind of say, right, if you have a completed package, it will take X number of days. But I think that the clock really starts once you've given them everything they've asked for. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Also something to keep in mind, as to if you need the money tomorrow, it's already probably too late to come today, right? You got to start thinking about, hey, I'm working with this big supplier. I might need a contract coming in 5 months or 6 months. This is the time to start thinking about that right now, right? If you've got something that's coming in April, you should probably be talking to banks right now. You should be looking for a loan right now. No one's making you take the money until you sign that document, right? So if something falls through, you can always say, hey, something fell through, let's wait. But if you come too late, that's a challenge that no one can solve for, right? No one can all of a sudden say, oh, you found out you need money tomorrow, I'm going to somehow make it happen and give you money tomorrow. That's not what this sort of type of lending is about. Any other questions, Lynn, that are from the audience? Or if anyone wants to go off mute, you're happy. We're more than happy to do that as well. Danny, Marissa, Lynn, anything from you guys? Any questions?
No, I think what a fun one I always like to ask people is just, for Adriana or Dang, just, you can anonymize it, but maybe a success story of a business that you've helped.
Give a success story.
Yeah, those are
Okay.
always fun to talk about.
All right, so I can give us a success story, one that I'm particularly proud of. It's actually down in the San Diego area in Santee. It's the golf course that Phil Mickelson grew up playing on. So the owner bought this golf course a few years back with a hard money loan, and he's been trying to get it refinanced for years, right? He spent 50, 60 grand on appraisals going with banks because he shows a lot of cash flow, right? A lot of cash flow, strong FICO, but no banks could figure out, none of the bigger banks could figure out how to get it closed because half of the course is on leased land, right? And it's leased from the city. So with it being leased from the city, the SBA lender is required to get the lease assigned to them. So I don't know if any of you guys have dealt with a municipality or city before, but if you send them a request, they pretty much reply based on their timeline, not yours, right? So no lender could figure out how to get it closed without this lease getting assigned. But me, because we do kind of I call them the hairy but doable deals, I figured out a way. So what you do, what happened is when you read the standard operating procedures from the SBA, it will say, yes, you need the lease based on A. And then but it also says unless. And no other lenders would read the unless part. So I read the unless, and they qualify with the unless B. So I was able to get the loan closed from, but nobody else would be willing to do it.
That's
So
a really cool story.
Yeah. That's the nitty gritty. That's what we get down with.
So for me, my success story that really stays with me. I have a borrower, and in his own words, like I said, you do need a little bit of personal sometimes to season the meat and potatoes of your business. So he grew up dirt poor. He grew up, his mom was a single mom. She had him when she was 15 or 16, had his sister when she was like 20, 21, and she worked 2-3 jobs to put food on the table for them. He remembers growing up, eating the government cheese and the canned pork and things like that. Mom was a horrible cook, but when mom could splurge, she would buy the bullseye barbecue sauce. And no matter what piece of meat that she had, it was swimming in bullseye barbecue sauce in the oven. And that is what he grew up on. And he hated this bullseye barbecue sauce. So when he became of age, he joined the Air Force and he ended up in the kitchen. And to his surprise, guess what barbecue sauce that the Air Force has in the kitchen? Bullseye barbecue sauce. So he writes home to mom and he tells her that he can't believe that he still can't escape the barbecue sauce. And she writes back and says, if you don't like it, do it yourself. So he started, and this was in the early 90s. There's no Google. He couldn't, just Google barbecue sauce recipes. So he starts making his own barbecue sauce. It turns out really well. So from the early 90s up until 2015-ish, I want to say is when he said, he was just making it at home for him and his family and his friends. And then somebody was like, well, hey, why don't you go to like the farmer's market? You could sell this, like people would buy this. So he started in the farmer's market, and then he went to a couple of like trade shows and everything else. And then now he currently has a contract to sell in 12 Costco's in Southern Florida. And he is now he is working on being able to sell on the Walmart marketplace, and 6 of his local Walmart stores, like in stores. So he was reaching out for a loan, for that working capital to get everything going, ramp up his inventory and all of that. And so he was like, I went from hating barbecue sauce to making my own. He's got 6 different flavors. He's making it happen for himself. And so he was just telling me, he's like, I hated it. It was the worst thing ever. But that was like birthdays. Every birthday we had meat slathered in bullseye barbecue sauce because my mom didn't know how to cook. He was like, it was barely a step up from our spaghetti with ketchup, but it was still the same. And so that sticks with me because he was just so excited, and he was turned down from a couple of other lenders, some of the bigger banks. They were like, well, your credit's not there. I don't know if this is really going to work. And so he came to me and he was like, listen, you're like my last hope. Is there anything that we can make this happen? And we made it happen for him. So that's the one that sticks with me.
That's awesome. That's a great story. We'll give people another couple of seconds to kind of ask questions. We're kind of winding down here. I'll just say from the Bridge perspective, we love doing these sessions. We really appreciate everyone's time here. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit. I want to first thank Adriana and Tank for, incredible of you guys to kind of dedicate your time today on giving all of this information. I really enjoyed it personally. Danny, Marissa, Lynn, the entire SBDC team, these guys are the hidden resource, right? Use your SBDCs as much as you can. Definitely go to the SBDCs. We love the kind of advice that they can provide. And if you're looking for a small business loan or a medium-sized business loan, anywhere from 100,000 to 10 million, go to bridgebuiltbyciti.com. It's a totally free process. Best case scenario, you will find 1 or 2 or 3 of these incredible lenders. You'll get a deal done and you'll say, wow, that was really quick and efficient and I didn't have to call 10 people. Worst case scenario, you will waste 20 minutes and you'll say, that guy, he told me this is the worst case scenario, so it wasn't that bad. So we hope you guys use the platform. We hope you guys found this information helpful. And I'll hand it back to Danny and Marissa or to Adriana and Tank for any sort of closing thoughts.
Yeah, we'll let Adriana and Thane see if they have any closing thoughts.
For me, I would just say, like Rohit said, don't come to us last minute. The week before Christmas, it's Tuesday before Christmas, and I get a phone call. I need $250,000 by Friday. We can't make that happen. I'm not a magician. I can't make that happen. And this is what I always say, this is an SBA loan, it's a government-backed loan, to be a little bit, brass with it. The government doesn't move very quickly to get you money. It's the truth. We can only do what we can do. And with that being said, this is a government-backed loan. The documentation that we are asking for is not just for us. This is an SBA requirement. Asking for your personal tax return, that is a requirement. We cannot move forward without that. Asking for, the business tax return, that is an SBA requirement. That has nothing to do with us here at CDC. That is what the government is asking for if you're asking for their money.
I would just say, while I do expect everything to be done properly in terms of the use of proceeds and getting all your documentation, I'm more than happy to just answer questions. I put my email in the box. If anybody wants to ask me a question about the process, random thoughts on the economy, feel free to shoot away. That's what I'm here for. I would like to keep the stories about 3rd grade trauma to a minimum, but anything business related, please do contact me.
Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate Rohit, Adriana, Thane for coming on. Again, we're the San Diego and Imperial Small Business Development Center. And as Rohit talked about, we're a free service. In 2022, we helped well over 10,000 businesses with 20,000 hours of one-on-one business advising them, helping them do everything from start businesses to access capital, help people access over 550 million in capital last year. So, but we're excited about what Bridge by Citi is is available for, because as Rohit was explaining, it's oftentimes, challenging to go out and shop different lenders, even for, oftentimes even for us with working with so many different lenders. And I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm really excited about what they're doing. So really do appreciate everybody. We'll of course be emailing out the recording to this. As Lynn put in, also, we do have a Small Business Expo in person next Friday at Southwestern College in Chula Vista. Which if you're interested in government contracting and lending on ground government contracting, there's that. And of course, we have our Meet the Lenders every month as well. So we do appreciate everybody, and have a great 3-day weekend coming up. Take care.
Thank you all. Take
Happy
care.
Friday. Have a good
Happy
one.
Friday.
Happy Friday.